Hey guys, welcome to Purl Together. I'm Janet, and this is video 1 of the sloth series where I'm going to go super slow, help you at every step along the way, and we're going to make the Rose City Rollers. Okay, I know that's probably backwards for you. Don't worry. It's a free download on Ravelry.com, and so I want you to print that, and then we'll go through it together. We'll go through the instructions together. So you need to be thinking about what yarn you want to use for that. The pattern, here, I'll just share my screen and we'll go through it initially a little bit at a time. But first I want to talk a little bit about the weight of yarn. Okay, you'll notice on the pattern that it's a sock pattern. So normally you would want sock yarn or fingering weight. That just means it's a little bit smaller in diameter, so you're knitting a finer weight fabric. Okay. I'm going to do the class sock, or my demonstration sock. I'm going to use a worsted weight yarn, which is thicker. And the only reason I'm doing that is for the purposes of videoing, so that I can get the camera close enough that you can see clearly what I'm doing. So, you know, it's harder to do that. It's harder to zoom in with fingering weight yarn. Okay. So, and a note on that, if I have to zoom in super, super close, you're going to see all like my farmy hand, hangnails and stuff. I mean, we live on a farm. I work outside a lot. We live in the country. So if you're looking for somebody who's like perfectly manicured nails and all that, that would not be me, obviously. So I'm just telling it like it is. So if you need that, I'm sorry, you're going to have to go somewhere else. But if you just want to keep it real and I'm going to help you as best I can, and I will put forth my best effort, then this is the place for you. So welcome. All right, so I'm using worsted weight yarn. Now, if you want to do that too, for the sake of following along exactly with me, you could do that. Okay, now this is some funky stuff that I was given. I don't know, a couple years ago, my mom ran across this woman who she had gone to somebody died in her family. I think one of her parents unfortunately passed away. There was all this stuff in her garage, and there was this big like bin and garbage bag full of all this crazy yarn that had no labels, right? We didn't exactly know what fiber content it was. I tried to felt it and I couldn't, and so I realized it was not 100% wool. It was, some kind of acrylic blend, and it's approximately worsted weight. So I decided to just use it. My mom washed a bunch of it and gave it to me. Thanks, Nana. And so I'm using that. You can use whatever you want. If you want to use, we all have this stuff laying around. Like I was given a bunch of Red Heart yarn. This was back when it was $1.27 a skein from Ben Franklin. Do they even have Ben Franklin anymore? Anyway, a dear friend of mine who lives out here in the country with us, she lives down the road, and she called me. I'm going to ramble a little bit here, but I just love her. Her name is Nancy, and she's 87, and she called me the other day and said, I know you're primarily a knitter, but I have this question with a crochet pattern, and she wants to know if I would come down and help her sort it out, and I did. And before I left, she gave me a pile of Red Heart yarn, which I have to say it's not my favorite, but you know what? It's great for crafty, durable projects like this. So I'm going to make these slipper socks. I'll probably give them to one of my kids, or because I have huge feet and I don't want to take that time right now to knit socks that big. So we've also used the crazy acrylic yarn we've used for baby goat sweaters, right? So stuff like that you need to be machine washable. I'm a bit of a yarn snob if it's stuff I'm going to have next to my skin. But, for on my feet, or durable mittens for your kids, when they're going to grow out of them quickly and you just need something to machine wash, then, by all means, go for the Target, Red Heart, Walmart yarn, whatever. Okay, now, if you want to knit it in fingering weight, proper sock yarn, there's lots of options for that. I can put some links below. In fact, I'll make a note of that. I got to write stuff down while I'm talking because I'll totally forget. So I'll put some links below where you can get reasonably priced fingering weight sock yarn. Knitpicks.com has some great stuff. I've knitted let's see, I knitted this sock. We did our toe up sock tutorial. I knitted that out of the Felici Knit Picks yarn. Anyway, there's all kinds of fun places where you can spend lots of money and buy yarn. So I'll put you some links down below in this video for that. Okay, so moving on, let's talk for a second about swatching. Everybody hates swatching, and I get that, I understand, but it's important to determine the number of stitches per inch that you will have so that you can gauge how many stitches you need to cast on to go around your foot. Yeah, I mean, we want it to fit, right? You're going to go to all this time and knitting. Now, this is very, very fine. I don't know if you can see that. Pardon the cat hair. Okay, there is approximately 9 to 10 stitches per inch in this sock. Worsted weight? No, I'm going to get this stuff. I'm going to get probably maybe 5 to 6 stitches per inch. So I'm going to cast on a whole lot fewer. But the reason it's important to make a little sample square is so that you can measure that, because you want it to fit. So I got too much crap on my desk and it's all tangled up. So I will show you how to cast on, and I will show you how to knit a little swatch, and then we'll do a little knitting math. Don't freak out about that. We'll do a little math and we'll determine how many stitches you need to cast on. Okay, so that'll be coming up in a few minutes. What I would like you to do is print the pattern if you haven't already. Let's take a look at that for a second. Let me share my screen and we will look at the pattern. So the Rose City Rollers, easy roll top ankle socks, perfect for summer knitting and wearing. We're headed into summer here. Okay, so what it starts out with, hopefully you can see my cursor over here. So I want you to read through the pattern really carefully, okay? The sizes will be color coordinated throughout the pattern. So small will always be blue, medium is red, and large is green. And so these are the inches. Measure your foot in circumference so that you know which ones you're gonna do, which color or which size you're gonna follow along. And then, you know, the reason I like to print my patterns is because you can make little notes in the margin, you can write on stuff, you can actually highlight the color if you want to so it's easier to find. And then she tells you the materials, fingering or saltwick wick yarn, approximately 50 to 75 grams. Now that's not very much. If you have a larger foot, you're gonna lean toward the 75 gram size. She is suggesting double pointed needles that are 2.25 millimeters. A tapestry needle, measuring tape, scissors, and stitch markers. Okay, lots to talk about here. So let me go back here and see if I can just talk to you for a second. Let me stop my share. Okay, so there's a lot going on right there. Just initially, just in that first thing, I've got my printout so I can refer to it. Okay, so if you want to do the fingering or sock weight, that's great. Do that, and I will help you with the math along the way. But first go ahead and measure the circumference of your foot. I would measure around the ball of your foot and also around maybe your ankle part too, just to kind of see, this should be close to the same measurement, but sometimes not, depends on the person. But, you know, split the difference and see. Okay, so then when we talk about double pointed needles, okay, you can use double pointed needles if you want to, and you can. And I do have a video on the channel that shows how to join in the round using DPNs or double pointed needles, and you can do that if you want to. I'll help you with that. I like to use the magic loop method. I'll link to another video that I have about the magic loop method. And the reason I prefer that is you just have less pokey, outy stuff to worry about. It's just more streamlined using a figure 8 pattern with the cable. And I think it's easier to learn with. You can do what makes sense for you, and if you have questions, then by all means, leave a comment in the Facebook group or below this video, and I will do my best to help you with that. Okay, she's saying 2.25 millimeter. Okay, now that's a specific size. The reason we will use millimeters instead of saying size 1 is because when I say size 1, that's a US, that's an American size. It's less exacting than the metric version. And since we do have some European people that have joined our group, yay, hi from Europe and New Zealand, pretty excited about that. We will stick with metric. Most of your gauges that look like this have both on them. So it will say the US size down below here, and it will have the metric or the millimeter above there. Okay, I don't know if you can really see that, but trust me, it does. So 2.25 would be size US size 1, 2.25 millimeters for all of our Canadian, European, and Southern Hemisphere friends. I'm so excited to have international people in our group. Welcome. I'm excited for everybody. I mean, I just never thought. Yay, I'm tickled about the whole thing. So, okay, moving on. Tapestry needle, we'll need that later for weaving in some ends and stuff. Okay, so when we move down here, now it says gauge. Okay, so the gauge of this is 24 stitches and 30 rows equals 3 inches. So she's estimating that with fingering weight yarn, you're going to get about 8 stitches per inch. So 24 stitches across this way, across 3 inches. So 24 divided by 3 would be 8. 8 stitches per inch, and approximately 30 rows in 3 inches. So that's how come there's this little window here on your gauge, right? So that you can measure. Now mine only goes to 2 inches, but you know, you get the idea, right? We can all do math. Okay, so you're gonna knit a little swatch or a little square. Now, I know people don't like to do that, but I tell you, I knitted an entire hat once. It was like a toque, like an ear flap hat, and I thought, oh, it's fabulous. It had fair all color work and the whole thing. I sent it off to my nephew. Now, he's a big dude, and the whole thing like covered his eyes and everything. It was just massive. We laughed about that. We still laugh about that. So I will get on with doing some demonstrating for the long tail cast on. We'll do our swatch today. Then we'll join in the round and actually begin the pattern. So again, I'm going to do it in worsted weight yarn. You do it in whatever yarn you want. We will explain the math as we go along. Now we want to knit a swatch or just a little sample square so that we can determine how many stitches per inch we will have, so our sock will fit. So we're going to start off with the long tail cast on, both for this swatch and also for our sock. So to do that, we're just going to make a slip knot. Now I have the tail of the yarn over to my left, and I'm just going to make a slip knot. So from the way I do that is I just go from right to left, and I put the right side over the left and make a loop, and then I take the yarn around below and pull it through that loop that I just made. Now you can make a slip knot however you want. There's, you know, a bajillion ways to do it. That's just how I do it. So again, I just go right over left, around below, and through, and pull it through. Okay, so then you're going to just put that on your needle. Now I am using, let me talk about that for a second. I am using a very long cable here because I want to show you how to do the magic loop. That's my preferred method. You can use 2 circulars or double pointed needles if you like. And then I'm also, just because I kind of have an idea of what my gauge is for worsted weight yarn, I am using a 5mm needles out of my set. Okay, these are from Knit Picks. They're interchangeable wooden needle sets, meaning I can change the tips on the cable just by unscrewing them, and then you tighten them with this little key that it comes with. So I'll put a link to that below if you like. Anyway, so I am starting off with that. We'll see. The point of doing the swatch is to see if that's the needle and yarn combination that you choose to have. Okay, so you saw me do that out of habit. I just wrap around my pinky and up over the top, and that's how I control my tension. If you're brand new, it's okay to just grab the yarn. I just learned that as a child and have continued to do that. Now on my left hand, I pinch the yarn between my middle finger and my ring finger. I pinch, and then I go toward my body, around my thumb and over the top of my finger. So I'm kind of making a triangle, and then I secure my loop with my right index finger. Let me show you that again. So I pinch with my palm up, I pinch with my middle finger, put the yarn between the middle finger and ring finger. I go toward my body around my thumb, and over the top of my index finger, and then I kind of turn my hand up like this, like I'm cupping something, and I'm kind of making a triangle, see? Now I'm also holding my loop on so it doesn't slide off, because I don't want to crank that down really tight. I want it snug but not tight. And I'm going to take my needle and tuck it under into that triangle, okay? And then I grip with my left hand, and I take my yarn around the top counterclockwise, okay? And then take that loop over the top. Okay, don't worry, I'll show you a bunch more times. If you didn't get it that first time, that's okay. This is the sloth series. So fast forward if you're bored, but this is for newbies that need to go super slow. So pinch around the thumb and forefinger. So you're making your triangle, kind of holding your hand like a cup. Underneath in the loop, wrap counterclockwise. Sorry, my big thumb's in the way there. Okay, you're going to wrap counterclockwise and then take that loop over the top. Okay, I'm kind of holding the needle too down here so it doesn't fall. Okay, so now we've got 3, including our initial slip knot. So that's 3. I would do like 20 for your swatch. If you're using fingering weight yarn, I would probably do more like 32 so that you have a good 4-inch, 3 to 4 inch swatch. But since I'm not going to cast on that many just because I'm using the thicker yarn. But if you are using proper finger weight or sock weight yarn, then I would cast on more like 30 or 40. So pinch around the thumb towards your body and around the index finger so you're making your triangle. Poke the needle up under from underneath. Wrap the yarn counterclockwise. And then slip that loop up over the top and draw it snug. Okay? So you're going to do that again, and you'll see it because it always feels super awkward in the beginning. When I pull that, I realize I just kind of wind myself around as I come back up. Okay, and I just do that out of habit, you know, kind of just a winding up motion as I'm coming back up toward the needle. Okay, so you can see once you get it, it goes pretty quickly, but not to worry. Again, I'll show you again. Pinch it in between your middle finger, ring finger, around the thumb, over the top to make that triangle. Tuck your needle up underneath, wrapping counterclockwise, and put the loop over the top. And then you just draw it snug. You don't want it super tight. Now, a common mistake with new knitters is cranking that sucker down. I mean, tightening it up really, really tight. You will not want to do that because you won't be able to get your needle in order to knit your foundational row. Now, one way to mitigate that is to actually cast on with a needle size that's a little larger than what you really intend to use, or you could even cast on over 2 needles, you know, and make your loops over both of those. I don't like to do that because for me that's a little too sloppy. You know, you might just go up a size or 2 if you find that you're a brand new knitter and things are super tight. You could just cast on a little bit bigger, okay? All right, so do a few more of those. I'm about to run out of yarn. But do a few more. We'll do one more together. So we're going to pinch around the front toward your body of your thumb, over the top, underneath, into the loop, wrap counterclockwise around, and slip that loop over the top. Okay, now I am about to run out of yarn for my swatch. Now the way to mitigate that, to make sure you have enough of a tail, is to simply take your tail in the beginning. Here, I'll just show you. Okay, so if I'm going to take all that out, if I wanted to cast on, let's say I know I needed to cast on 50 stitches, you know, I'd go wrap 50 times around just to make sure that I had enough. Because there's nothing worse than casting on, like, for a shawl that might be 150 stitches and realizing that, oh, whoopsie, you don't have enough tail to do that, and then you got to go start all over again. Huh, live and learn, right? Yeah, that's happened to me many times. Okay, so this is the long tail cast on simply because you're starting with a long tail. All right. So cast on a bunch of stitches. Again, I'm probably going to do, I don't know, 20 or so. Okay. One more time, really slow. All right, you can rewind if you need to. I'm going to cast on a bunch, and then I'm going to show you what else I do here in just a second. Let me finish my cast on. And if you'll notice, the way that your cast on goes on the needle, you have this kind of little bump down here on the bottom row. You have a little bump. And you have a little bump on that side too. So just like with sewing or quilting or anything else, you have a right side and a wrong side of your fabric, because knitting is just making fabric, really. So this is the right side. Well, the wrong side is where you have those bumps, and those look like purl bumps, don't they? So when we turn our work, many people will just go ahead and knit back this other way, and you can certainly do that, and that's fine. We're going to knit one side and purl the next side. I like to start out with a purl. Whoopsie, I'm going to get my hands now. Pardon me, because I'm new to this too. I like to start with a purl row, because then it will be consistent with your right side, wrong side. You'll have your purl bumps on this back side, and your cast on was really a knit side, okay? Now, if you're new to this, I do have videos about purling and knitting separately, but just as a quick refresher, so when we purl, we come in from the back, wrap counterclockwise, and then kind of push that through with your thumb and slip it off. So in from the back, wrap the yarn counterclockwise around there, through and off, okay? All right. So in order to knit this sock, you shouldn't have to purl if we're not adding a pattern, but you do need to purl for your swatch, okay? So let's purl on to the end of this row, and then we're just going to turn our work. We're just going to knit a little square or rectangle here in order for us to measure, and I will show you that. Okay, so we got to the end here, and now we've got our first purl row. We're going to turn our work over, and now this would be the right side, and you can see how it looks like a knit stitch on the other side. All right. So a quick little refresher: when you knit, let me just get away from the edge here. I'll do a couple. When we knit, we go in from the front, wrap counterclockwise, pull that loop through and off. Okay, in from the front, wrap counterclockwise, pull it through and off. And again, go to the playlist that I will arrange here this afternoon that is all about the basics with knitting and purling, as well as another video about the long tail cast on and joining in the round. But since this is the sloth series, we're going to go through it all here as well. We'll go over the basics kind of quickly, but we'll do the important stuff that is unique to sock knitting super slowly. Okay, so now I've gotten to the end of that row, and you can see here now I have my foundational cast on row and 1, 2. So now I'm going to turn my work again, and I'm going to purl my way back. So you're going to continue in this way, knitting and purling and making your little rectangle. You need to do that for a couple of inches probably, so we have a decent amount to measure. Okay, so go ahead and carry on with that until you have a couple of inches worth that you can measure in the window of your knitting gauge tool. Okay, so I've knitted this rectangle, and you know, I'm not going to continue on with this. You can kind of see like it's a little holy. I don't know, for a sock, I guess I would prefer to have more denser, tighter woven fabric. So that tells me that I need to go down a needle size. So these are 5mm, and I'm going to go check in my pile here. I'm going to go down to either 4.5mm or a 4mm to achieve the thickness and density of the fabric that I want. And the reason it's important to me, because these are going to end up being kind of like slipper socks for my daughter. She's going to wear them up at the cabin. We have some hardwood floors in our house, so they need to be a little bit more durable. She's probably also going to put them in her snow boots, and, you know, they'll be thicker socks. But I want them to be, you know, certainly I want them to be durable enough. And if they're not, if the fabric that I've chosen here, you know, if it ends up being kind of too airy and holey, it's going to do that, just that. It's going to wear a hole within, you know, a month or even less. And so I'm going to take this back down, and I know that the ripping is a little disconcerting for you newer knitters, but trust me, it is worth it to get your swatch right. It's worth it in the long run because you're going to put several hours of work into this. It is worth it to get it right. Okay, so now I've reknitted my swatch with smaller 4mm needles. I actually went down to a 4mm diameter needle to obtain the kind of the density of the fabric that I think will work best for what I want. So you need to do that, whatever works for you. And then I'm going to place my gauge over this. I'm going to measure, and I'm just going to count my stitches across. So I have, see if I can do this without, if I can do it through the camera, I will. But there's 1, 2, 3. It looks like I have about 5 stitches per inch. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4. About 5 stitches per inch, and that's probably about right for me and my tension and the way that I knit for worsted weight. So I will have, you, according to the pattern, would want to have roughly 8 stitches per inch for your gauge, but we're just going to do the math and I'm going to make this work. So, all right, so I measured the circumference of my daughter's foot, her ankle, and around the ball of her foot, and we're going to just kind of split the difference and take the average of that. And my gauge was 5 stitches per inch. Her circumference of her ankle is roughly, well, it's a little over 9 inches. We're going to go with 9 inches. So that's going to mean I want to cast on 40 stitches. So I've made my slip knot and I put it on, and I'm just going to do my cast on here. And let me show you, well, first let me take that out and I'll show you from my slip knot. I shouldn't have pulled that out. From my slip knot, I'm going to kind of just estimate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so that would be a roughly 10 wraps is about, that's the distance for about 10 stitches of cast on. So I'll double that over and get 20, 30, and 40. And I kind of just double that over and to be able to estimate the length that I need of my long tail. So, again, you're going to do your pinching, wrap around the front towards your body and over your index finger, make your triangle, up under, wrap around, and over the top. So you're going to cast on your correct number of stitches, whether it's 40 like me, and you're going to follow along with your worsted weight, or you're going to follow the pattern exactly and cast on the appropriate size according to the directions. I ended up actually casting on 44. I remeasured her foot and it was like 9 1/4 inches, and that worked out to be about 41.25 stitches all the way around after I multiplied by 5 stitches per inch. So I'm going to cast on 44. I try to use multiples of 4. I don't know. I usually, when you do some kind of ribbing, like if you do a cuff of a sock that's a knit 2, purl 2 ribbing, then that is a multiple of 4, and often patterns are multiples of 4 or 6 or 8, so I guess I just have that kind of ingrained. So now that I've cast on my 44 stitches, I want to be able to join my work into a circle. So to do that, you want to pull this through to the halfway point of your cable if you're doing magic loop. If you're not and you're choosing to use double pointed needles, then you'll want to arrange your stitches so that you have an equal number of stitches on each of your DPNs. Okay, so for me, I'm going to go to approximately the halfway point, and I'm going to bend my cable, and I'm going to not bend it super tight because I don't want to actually crimp it, but then I'm just going to pull that through. Okay, so I have roughly the same number of stitches on each needle. Now you can count that. I probably should have, and I'll probably adjust it at some point as I'm going around, make sure I have 22 on each side, or I might do 20 and 24, and I'll explain the reason why later for that. What I like to do, however, is arrange this in such a way that my ending is on the bottom. I want to have my ending on the bottom. Now be careful doing this, turning stuff over. You want to make sure that you don't twist any of your stitches, okay? Being careful not to twist anything. So you want to have the insides of your foundational row together, okay? Now the way that I join into the round, and I have another video about this, but rather than have you click away, I'll just show you. I've got my tail coming off the bottom, and here's my working yarn as well. And the bottom needle, I'm kind of holding this so I have a top and a bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this through. And this is called magic loop because there's a loop on that side, and now I'm going to make a loop on this side. So my cable of my circular needle actually kind of makes a figure 8. Then I'm going to go into this first one as if to purl. This is just the way I do it. You can use a tapestry needle if you want and just take this tail and thread it back through. I just use my other needle because, I don't know, one time I was too lazy to go find the tapestry needle. I just loop that over though, and I draw it back in. I just loop that over and I just pull it through. That's it. That's all I do is pull it through so that it's secure. And then you know what? I just tie it. There's lots of ways to join. Some people do a thing where they switch places with this stitch and that stitch and they cross them over and then they just keep knitting. Some people don't tie anything at all. They just keep knitting and it kind of sucks up eventually. I don't know. I guess I'm paranoid about that. I prefer to actually tie that sucker, especially with socks, because, you know, they're going to get a lot of wear. So I just do a little square knot there with my working yarn and the tail. I just do a little square knot and I just cinch that up. And yeah, you know, it makes a little nubbin, but I just prefer that. So you do what you prefer. Now, I get the tail out of the way. I don't want to start knitting with that. Trust me, I've done it. And then you're like, what? And you have to go take all that back out and start over. So, all right, we have joined into the round. All right, so here's our working yarn. We're going to start knitting across this way. And let's check our pattern. Let's see what the pattern says. You cast on the appropriate size stitches for you, whether that's 56, 64, or 72, or you're doing the worsted weight version with me, which could be 44 or 48, depending on your measurements. Okay. Then we're going to distribute the stitches evenly over 4 needles or do the magic loop like we are. Okay, make sure the stitches aren't twisted and join in the round. Some people like to place a stitch marker at the beginning of the round. I prefer to leave the tail for my cast on, and I do that too. I don't figure I need a stitch marker here when I have my tail showing me that that's the beginning. Okay, now it says work even in stockinette stitch, knitting every row for at least 1 inch to measure. Unroll the cuff and measure from the cast on edge. Now, the reason it's called a Rose City roller is because as you knit, if you don't knit in purl or you don't knit a garter stitch edge, your edge will start to roll just as in the picture. Okay? So that's kind of cool. So we're just going to knit. I'm straightening all this out and I'm putting my my tail here. I like to tuck that under my left middle finger to kind of keep it out of the way till I get established and going here. So I just put my needle in as if to knit and start knitting. Okay. And we're just going to go round and round and round for 1 inch, or however tall you choose to make the cuff. So since this pattern is for ankle socks, 1 inch is probably sufficient. But you do what makes you happy, because you are the boss of your knitting. You'll hear me say that quite a bit. You are the boss of your knitting. You make decisions about what you want your work to look like. Okay, I'm going to carry on here real quickly, and I'm just going to show you a couple more things, and then that'll be it until next time. This is Thursday. I would like to have our knitting schedule for this be a new video from me every Monday and Thursday. Monday and Thursday. That will give you an opportunity to do your work and catch up with where I'm at. That will give me an opportunity to answer questions and comments and help you along the way. So once I get to the end of this first half, we're doing magic loop. So, and this will apply to, well, a couple other things I'm going to say will apply to double pointed needles as well, but I'm going to pull this through, not too far though, because I don't want to yank my cable all the way through. And then turn my work over, and I'm going to go ahead and inch the other needle in. All right, here's my working yarn, and I need to pull this through and just curl it around so I can carry on knitting on the other half here. Now the first stitch that I do, I want to kind of suck that up a little bit, and that is particularly true with double points. When you go from one needle to the other and you're traveling around, definitely want to cinch up that first one and its partner. Cinch up, give the second one a good little tug here as well so that you avoid ladders. Ladders are where you end up seeing horizontal rungs of a ladder, is what it looks like, between your stitches or between your needle joins, and you want to avoid that. So carry on going round and round and round until you get 1 inch. Okay, I'm really happy you're here. That concludes session 1 of this Roller City Rose, I can't even speak, Rose City Rollers Sloth series. Wow, holy alliterations, Batman. Okay, so continue knitting around and round and round until you measure 1 inch from the cast on edge of the cuff. You'll need to kind of unroll that to check. All right, be sure to comment and subscribe here so you don't miss when I upload the next one. We're going to shoot for every Monday and Thursday. Unless that doesn't work for you, feel free to leave a comment down below in this video or in the Facebook group. You can always also send me an email if you like at jana@celticprairiefarm.com. I'm really glad you're here, and I look forward to seeing your works in progress. Take care.